Today's subject matter deals with why manufacturers are vulnerable to targets for attackers. Once an organization has been compromised, attackers have access to vendors, partners, and customers through trusted networks and communication. Over 90% of the time, the breach starts with an employee clicking on a malicious link. Our guest today, Joel Cahill, is the CEO of INFIMA, a Florida-based cybersecurity training and protection platform. INFIMA was founded by Joel and his college roommate, Go Gators, to serve the growing cybersecurity needs to small and medium-sized organizations. With its behavioral approach to compliance training, INFIMA security services are utilized by today's corporations, governments, and nonprofits across the country. Once we start the presentation, please type your questions in the box on the right side of your screen. Thank you, and now Joel will start the presentation.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, everybody, for joining us, and sorry for the delay in getting started with the audio here. INFIMA is a cybersecurity awareness training platform. We're based here in Orlando. We are an MACF member and value our relationship and partnership with MACF and the resources that Florida makes available. I serve as the co-founder and CEO of INFIMA. I grew up here in Florida, so I have a particular desire to help support our industry here. My background was spending over a decade in New York City in the financial industry. INFIMA is designed as a company. Our objective is to engineer solutions that effectively just simplify your cybersecurity complexities. We take the things that are very, very heavy on your plate, that are challenging and tricky, and we try to simplify those things to deliver it in ways that you can easily implement into your organization. Now that I've introduced myself, I would like to find out who exactly is here with us. We've got a poll that will pop up, and you can inform us if any one of these fits you, the executive IT, HR, compliance. While you're answering this poll question, I'd like to just introduce NIST and some of the standards that we'll be discussing. There is a reason that we're here. The reason we're here is that manufacturers are facing more and more cybersecurity threats as hackers and attackers have honed their skills, and so the manufacturing industry has become a particular focus of those attacks. NIST, as a body, stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's under the Department of Commerce, and its objective is to promote innovation and industrial competitiveness in the United States. NIST then has pushed down some requirements and suggestions for security, and we're going to get into some of those and how they relate specifically to the manufacturing industry. So we mentioned that manufacturers are a target for attackers. This chart here gives you a little bit of a visual depiction of that. That green on the far left that takes up about a third of the chart, that is a representation of the manufacturing industry and how much malware there has been detected through one of the industry's leading reports. Now, why is this? Why are they attacking manufacturers? Importantly, manufacturers have these highly interconnected supply chains because that is how business gets done. They also have valuable intellectual property. Cyber espionage is a big reason for attacking manufacturers, whether it's competitive from stateside competitors or overseas. Who are they actually attacking? They're attacking your business, but specifically they're after your people. And over 90% of the attacks that are successful on these manufacturing companies are actually coming through phishing emails. So we'll get a little bit more into that. But the important thing to recognize is that your employees are already busy. They already have plenty of things on their plate, and they're now being targeted by these attackers. This is why NIST and regulatory bodies and your clients and those within your supply chain are more and more focused on cybersecurity needs, and specifically the training of your people. So the challenge here is that the attackers know that you have deeply integrated supply chains, and then that necessarily has trust built in. And so the attackers are actually exploiting that trust. So now, what's the cost? What are your risks here? Well, there's obviously the financial losses from various different attacks. You can lose trust with your partners, your vendors, your customers, and you have the potential for production outages and lost intellectual property or other know-how that you would otherwise want protected. So let's just talk about some of the large organizations that have been attacked in recent years. The NotPetya attack came out. It was popular in June of 2017, and Mondelez, one of the largest food manufacturers, makes your favorite Oreo cookies and others. They were attacked. They got hit by the NotPetya attack, and this 100 million number is actually not even the amount that they lost. They lost much more than that. The 100 million is how much they're fighting with their insurance company, who is refusing to pay. Now, why are they refusing to pay? It's because they're claiming that the NotPetya attack, as it's called, was actually a state-sponsored terrorist attack, because all signs have pointed back towards Russia. And in reality, that attack initially started because Russia was trying to attack Ukrainian organizations and to stop business. And then, as with many viruses, once they are out in the wild, they can spread rampantly. And so Mondelez had a considerable loss to this attack. So did Maersk, one of the largest shipping companies, controls 20% of the global shipping capacity. Merck, the drug manufacturer, they were shut down for days with manufacturing, sales, and research departments. Their losses, they estimate, was close to $700 million. And FedEx, another organization that lost in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and specifically their CEO afterwards noted how they were going to be tightening their defenses, which meant them internally and then also with their partners throughout their supply chain. So the point here is not to be getting into the scare as much as to say these are attacks that are happening. This is our new reality, unfortunately, and your organization will be under attack, but also those in your supply chain, those your partners are under attack, and they are going to be more and more focused on keeping all of their trusted relationships safe and secure. So that's why we're going to be talking about security awareness training. That's why NIST is promulgating these requirements in this guidance. So what specifically does NIST require? Well, they have a cybersecurity framework, the CSF they call it, and it has 5 core functions that it calls out. So they want you to be able to identify risks, protect against them, detect those things that are occurring, respond to any breaches, and then recover from them. You'll notice that protect is highlighted there. We're going to be focusing in then on that protect function. Within that protect function, there are 5 primary things that are called out that we believe are the first steps for someone in that, for each organization to move towards cybersecurity protection. The first of those is user awareness training, which we're going to be talking about further. 2-factor authentication, which you very well likely have heard about, which improves your password security. Patching, which is taking care of the system upgrades, software upgrades with your operating system and other software. Firewall to protect your outer layer of security. And antivirus or anti-malware, which should protect against many of those attacks that do get through all of your protections. So then, why security awareness training, and why did we put that as the first one? Well, over 90%, like we said, over 90% of these attacks do come through phishing emails or other things that are luring one of your employees into making a poor decision. So that poor decision can come in something as simple as clicking on a link that they otherwise shouldn't have, or downloading something they shouldn't have, or being fooled into thinking they're on a safe Microsoft website and putting their credentials, their login and password information and now somebody is able to log into their email account or other places on your network. This can lead to ransomware, credential theft, like we were just discussing, data loss, and business interruption, amongst other things. So NIST calls it out, but also your customers are going to be requesting that you implement these kinds of protections because they want to protect trade secrets. They want to prevent any kind of fraudulent wire transfers, personally identifiable information, keep that protected from compromise. Keep their supply chain running so that there are not losses to productivity. So we're here to talk about manufacturers. So how at risk are manufacturers? Well, unfortunately, they're very much at risk. When we just talked about that first chart that showed that about 1/3 of the malware detections are actually within the manufacturing sector. Now, if you look at this, the manufacturing sector tends to be very susceptible to these phishing attacks, in part because they're just simply inundated with them. But your team has plenty on their plate. People are busy. They have deadlines, whether it's month-end deadlines, client deadlines, any kind of vendor requirements, anything that can put added pressure on them makes it so that the volume of emails coming through, it's just simple. It's very easy to make an easy mistake, give away important information that allows somebody an entry into your network. So we're talked a little bit about cybersecurity awareness training, and I'd like to know if you have used it, never have, or previously did and are no longer using it. So as we're getting these results back in, I want to introduce something that is a little bit different. And if you notice when Sherry first introduced me, she mentioned that we focus on behaviors. And the important thing that we believe is okay, great. Thanks for the responses on the poll. So what we focus on are the behaviors, and the reason we focus on behaviors is because you can tell every single person in your organization that, hey, bad emails might come through. There's somebody who may call you and tell you that they're somebody that they're not, and they're trying to get information, and people will hear that. The problem is when you're in the midst of being extraordinarily busy and you have plenty on your plate, it's very, very easy to make that simple mistake that you don't even realize you've made. And so we want people to understand what those risks are, but we also don't believe that they need to become cybersecurity sleuths necessarily so that they can become so well informed on cybersecurity that they're also going to spend a half hour determining whether or not to open every email because they're looking through all the raw data. Instead, we really try to focus on how do you create safe behaviors, effectively remove the unsafe behaviors. It's not unlike we learned at an early age that you look both ways before crossing a road, and like this example, you just simply don't walk down that dark alleyway when there is a lit path. Maybe it takes a second or two longer, but most importantly, you are materially reducing your risk and your organization's risk. So we focus on the behaviors, and we can get a little bit more into that, but the knowledge is one piece, but understanding how to reduce your risk by just simply removing unsafe behaviors is critically important. So to go a little bit further into that idea that it's not just simply about knowledge, Stripe did an internal test, and Stripe, if you're not aware of them, is now a $20 billion super unicorn, if you will, in Silicon Valley, and they've now been embraced by Uber and Google even as to manage online payments for them. So one of their security engineers, a forward-thinking security engineer at Stripe, decided, hey, we're exposed to these phishing schemes, and we'd like to see how exposed we are. How good are our people at avoiding these things? So the challenge is they want to test their internal vulnerability to phishing, which is a version of social engineering. You would expect that a very smart company, very young company like Stripe would be not very exposed to phishing because they have employees who are very well aware of those attacks and what can happen to them in their organization, especially a financial organization. Well, the results were quite shocking. 25% of their entire organization was successfully phished, meaning they did click on that link. They did do what the attacker would have wanted them to do. And that's not good. But to make matters a little bit worse, 2 of those security engineers who were on the team who created those tests actually fell for the tests themselves. So to get back to the point that it's not about knowledge, it's not about who's smarter than whom, it's actually about changing those behaviors to make that an organization safer. And this, the woman who actually put on the test, this quote here that I really like, it doesn't matter how technical you are, this applies to all of us. Everyone is vulnerable to this. And then she says it's pretty terrifying, right? Our objective is to not be so focused on the fear, but more so to focus on how do we just avoid these things? How do we make our people better so that there is a much lower risk to bad outcomes? So we're going to jump into some examples, because everybody's been told that phishing emails are going to look like a certain way. Somebody is not going to be able to speak English. They're going to misspell words. They're going to have poor grammar. So really, how hard are these to recognize? Well, here's a great example of one. Everybody's on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, then it's almost like you're missing out on the whole business world. But one of the important things that LinkedIn will send you is, hey, so many people are looking at your profile. Well, we're always pretty interested, right? When somebody's looking at our profile on whatever version of social media. So you're going to quickly look at this. It looks exactly like LinkedIn. That graphic isn't grainy. There's nothing that looks wrong with it. Well, in this case, the attacker just took the exact email that LinkedIn sent, and then they repeated it, and they sent it to you. Now, if you want to see, you can actually look at where there might be something that's a little bit funny in this one. It says no reply at linkedin.com, but in reality, that what looks like an I, a capital I, is actually a lowercase l. We don't believe that you need to be going into these things and looking so deeply at every single link to understand how they've created a potential phishing email. Really, the behavior change here is you just go to your browser and type in linkedin.com if you really need to know who's been looking at your profile. Unfortunately, they can make these attacks look very, very good. And again, these are the types of things that will be seen by your organization, those in your supply chain, your vendors, your customers. And this is why they are driving you to say, hey, you need to train your employees. This is why large organizations are saying you're going to need to improve security so that we have less exposure to our own company. Here's another one that you would think, well, people shouldn't really click on this one very much, right? If you get an email from a guy named Bill Fields, you don't know who Bill Fields is. It says greetings, you don't know who that greetings is too. There's no specific name. You may not even know who FM Forums is. And he's, doesn't give any additional contact information. Well, this seems like a low quality phishing email, but in reality, many people have clicked on this exact email. This one comes from the wild, and this one carried one of the most vicious forms of malware called Emotet. So again, if you don't know Bill Fields, the behavior change is to find out a way that you can contact Bill Fields or FM Forums to find out, hey, is this real? But if you're not expecting this invoice, it's unlikely that it is real. Surprisingly, to us, to our organization, the most clicked on fish in the fourth quarter of 2018 within our organization, because we send these fake phishing emails out to all of our clients throughout the month, was this one. And interestingly, it looks good, right, that somebody might click on something like this, except for the fact that most people don't have any kind of voicemail attached to their Outlook. So they're still clicking on this because you know what? it's interesting. You want to know what that voicemail says. You want to know 95% chance that it is unlikely to be real, but you're like, that's that 5%. I don't want to miss a sale, so I need to find out what it says. Well, you know, one good way is to first of all start out and you look, well, Outlook is spelled with an I, with an L, not an I, and so that is not the right address even to be Outlook.com, assuming that you're supposed to get an email from Outlook.com. But more importantly, it's that moment to step back. It's that behavior change to step back and say, hey, does this make sense? Is this what I should be clicking on? So who does actually use our training? We've been in many different regulated industries. We love serving those in manufacturing. We've had a great deal of experience throughout using different regulatory, fitting different regulatory needs and compliance needs. Our partnership with MACF has been excellent. We value the two-way learning that we're able to gather from there. And again, at the end of the day, what we're trying to work through and share is that these attacks are coming. They are frightening, but just as much as they're frightening, they are driving compliance needs, and they are driving the larger manufacturers or larger organizations or clients or anything, you know, larger vendors to say, hey, you're going to need to enhance your security. And the reason being, they need to protect themselves. In that effort, it also protects you, and it makes you less vulnerable. So I'll hand it back over to Sherry to close us.
Okay, Joel, thank you so much. So I see we have a few questions here. One of the questions, could you share some additional client case studies? Do you have another study that you could share with us?
Yeah, I do. One of the big drivers for us is compliance. Compliance is a big reason that people are purchasing our software and implementing our platform. We have a client here in Orlando who was a little bit hesitant initially. They didn't want to put another burden on their employees for training or for these phishing emails. And then we get a call shortly thereafter as they're looking to win a bid with a very large organization. And in that larger organization required in their vendor management process to look at their, our clients' cybersecurity policies, and specifically if there was any security awareness training for their employees. In the end, they've implemented our security awareness platform, and they won the client, and they're now prepared for other large clients with their new security footprint.
Excellent. I have another question from another attendee. How technical do I need to be?
That's a good question. So our platform, INFIMA's platform, is built to be very simple to onboard and simple to manage. If you are able to utilize your email, then you're able to manage our platform.
Okay. And one more question here I see, and from one of the attendees, what's the first step in getting started with your product?
So, our first steps, you're able to reach out to MACF to start our process. The actual onboarding is quite simple from there, but through a partnership with MACF, you're able to get access to exclusive benefits through MACF and again, this partnership that we have.
Thank you. We appreciate those of you attending today. Hope you enjoyed your lunch, and we look forward to having you on our next webinar. Thank you and have a great day, and thank you, Joel.
Thank you.